The alien queen's daughters vanished overnight, only the human knew where they were. The alarms on the Irithyll hive ship Void's cradle went off at exactly 0300 station time, which is, in my professional opinion, the worst possible hour for a diplomatic incident. Every light in the royal wing turned the color of a bruised plum, klaxons screamed in 3 octaves designed specifically to bypass earplugs, and somewhere above it all, Queen Vesnara let out a sound that translated roughly into, "Someone is going to die today, and I have not yet decided who." Turns out the answer was almost me. Here's the situation, condensed for those of you who don't want the full committee report: the Queen's 3 daughters, the entire royal succession, the future of an empire that had eaten 6-star systems for breakfast, had vanished from their sealed chambers. Chambers guarded by bio-sentinels that were, and I quote the specification sheet, functionally unkillable. No forced entry. No blood. No distress call. Just 3 empty rooms and a queen who was already flipping through the guard roster alphabetically, looking for someone to feed to something. Meanwhile, 3 decks down, I was drinking the worst cup of synth coffee in the known galaxy and minding my own business. My name is Dallas Okoye. I am, on paper, a junior human liaison, which is a fancy way of saying I'm the guy nobody blames for anything important until it turns out the important thing was actually my fault. When the alarm started, my first thought wasn't fear. It was, well, it wasn't me, but they're absolutely going to ask anyway. Humans have a reputation out here, by the way. We're the species that keeps winning wars we shouldn't survive, negotiating treaties nobody thought we'd walk away from, and generally behaving like caffeinated toddlers who accidentally conquered interstellar diplomacy. Nobody trusts us. Everybody needs us. It's a great arrangement if you enjoy being resented professionally. So of course, 20 minutes after the alarm started, 2 guards the size of industrial refrigerators showed up at my quarters and escorted me, their word, my spine disagreed, to the throne chamber. Queen Vesnara is, and I say this with total sincerity, one of the more intimidating creatures I have ever stood in front of. 8 feet of chitin and fury, mandibles that could deb one a cow standing up, eyes like burnt amber. She looked at me like I was something she'd found stuck to the bottom of her throne. "Human," she said, in that voice that made the floor panels hum. "My daughters are missing." Yes. I got the memo. Sort of. It was more of a siren. I want to be clear that I was not trying to be funny. I was tired, my coffee had gone cold somewhere between my quarters and here, and I had genuinely not slept enough to filter my own mouth. The Queen's eyes narrowed in a way that suggested she was recalibrating whether, small and sarcastic, was a threat category. "You will explain where they are." "I don't know where they are. Nobody's told me anything except, 'Come here or die,' which, frankly, wasn't much of an invitation." There was a pause. A long one. The kind where several very large soldiers behind me shifted their weight like they were doing math about whether they'd need to clean the floor afterward. "Then you will find them," the Queen said. "Or you will explain, in great detail, why a human should be trusted with anything ever again." Cool. Great. No pressure. Just the fate of an interstellar empire and my personal existence, riding on my ability to function before my second cup of coffee. Here's the part that actually made me angry, though, not scared, angry. 3 days earlier, I had flagged a maintenance concern about the Royal Chamber's environmental systems. Specifically, an odd resonance pattern in the sub-flooring that didn't match any known structural function. I'd filed the report through proper channels, gotten a response that essentially translated to, "Humans do not understand Irithyll architecture, thank you for your input," and moved on with my life. Now their unkillable guards, who were apparently built to stop violence and not, say, biology, had failed to notice 3 god princesses vanish out from under their mandibles. And I was the one being threatened. You build an unkillable palace guard and forget pest control. Genuinely impressive priorities. "I'll need access to the chamber," I said. And someone who'll actually answer questions instead of being offended by them. The Queen made a sound that might have been a laugh, if laughing for Irithyll didn't sound like a landslide. You have one rotation. Bring me my daughters, human, or bring me nothing at all. Great. Very motivating. Very normal workplace pressure. I walked the scene like it was a bad crime procedural, because frankly that's the only framework my sleep-deprived brain had access to at 0330. The chamber was pristine. No signs of struggle. The bio-sentinels stood exactly where they always stood, humming with quiet murderous readiness, utterly unbothered by the fact that their entire job had failed spectacularly. That's when I noticed it. A faint vibration under the flooring, the same resonance pattern I'd flagged 3 days ago, except now it was stronger, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. I knelt down, ignoring the guards who looked at me like I'd started licking the walls, and pressed my palm flat against the floor. What is this? I asked one of the attending priests, a reedy old Irithyll named Asimeth who had the specific energy of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. Asimeth hesitated. Which, in my experience, is what people do right before they tell you the thing that's actually important. It is, the frequency of the ascension, he said carefully. It happens perhaps once in a generation. When royal daughters near maturity, their biology responds to a call embedded in the ship's oldest architecture. It is not an attack. It is not a kidnapping. Then what is it? He looked deeply uncomfortable. It is instinct. A migration. They are drawn toward the old growth chambers, deep in the ship, to undergo transformation. Wings. Full cognition. Sovereignty. It is sacred. It is also, he added, not something we discuss with outsiders. I stood there for a second, processing that the unkillable sentinels had failed to stop the daughters from vanishing because the daughters hadn't been in danger. They'd been doing something completely natural that nobody built the security system to recognize as non-threatening, because nobody ever thought to explain it to the system, or, apparently, to me. So let me get this straight, I said. Your entire military and religious apparatus, plus an unkillable guard detail, missed the fact that your daughters were just going through puberty. The silence that followed was the kind of silence you could have bottled and sold as a weapon. That is an extremely reductive human term, Asimeth said stiffly. It's an extremely accurate one. I will not pretend the Queen was thrilled when I explained this to her. There is a very specific expression an ancient warrior monarch makes when a human uses the word puberty in front of her entire court, and I got to witness it live. It was somewhere between fury and existential horror. You will retrieve them, she said, before this explanation becomes public record. Fine. But your guards aren't coming with me. Why? Because your guards are terrified of the old growth chambers, and terrified guards make terrified daughters, and terrified anything with claws is a bad combination in an enclosed space. Nobody argued with that, mostly because nobody could. Finding the old growth chambers wasn't hard, once I stopped thinking like a soldier and started thinking like someone who used to babysit his cousins. Where would 3 feral, newly transforming god princesses go? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere abandoned. Somewhere nobody with an agenda would follow them. The lower agricultural bay, decommissioned decades ago, fit the bill perfectly. Warm, dark, full of overgrown root systems that the ship's maintenance crews had simply never bothered clearing. The elite Irithyll soldiers assigned to escort me stopped at the threshold like the door had teeth. We cannot enter, the lead soldier said. It is forbidden ground during ascension. Cool. I'll just go alone then, into the sacred forbidden growth chamber containing 3 transforming apex predator princesses. Very normal Tuesday. Nobody stopped me, which tells you everything you need to know about how much they valued my continued existence versus their own superstitions. I walked in with exactly one item of preparation, a granola bar, because if I was going to die, I wasn't doing it on an empty stomach. The chamber was enormous, vaulted, thick with bioluminescent growth that pulsed gently in the dark. And there, curled among root systems taller than buildings, were the three daughters, no longer the sleek, composed princesses from the official portraits, but something rawer. New carapace still soft and pale. Half-formed wings folding and unfolding like they were testing an idea. Eyes that tracked me with the specific menace of something that hadn't decided yet whether I was food. "Hi," I said, because apparently that's still the correct opening line even at the end of the galaxy. "I brought a snack." "It's not for you. It's for me. I'm just going to eat it here, calmly, while we talk." The eldest daughter's head tilted at an angle that would have snapped a human neck. "You are not afraid," she said, voice layered and strange with the transformation. "I'm terrified. I'm just very good at hiding it behind sarcasm. It's a human specialty." That got something out of her that might have been amusement, if amusement for Irithyll sounded like rustling static. "Everyone else screams," the youngest said. "Or bows. Or runs. Yeah, well, everyone else also missed the fact that you three weren't in danger, you were just growing up somewhere quiet, away from a court that treats every private moment like a security briefing. Can't imagine why you'd want some peace and quiet from that." The middle daughter actually laughed, a real one this time. "The human insults our mother's court. I'm insulting bureaucracy in general. Your mother specifically included, sure. There's something about not being afraid of royalty that royalty finds either infuriating or fascinating, and thankfully, that day, it landed on fascinating. We talked for a while, about the transformation, about what they needed, about the fact that yes, eventually, they'd have to go back upstairs and deal with a mother who was one bad diplomatic incident away from starting a war with her own succession line. They came back with me. Wings not fully formed, carapace still soft, but walking under their own power, unshackled and completely unkidnapped, exactly as they'd left. Queen Vesnara's face, when her three very much alive, very much fine daughters walked back into the throne room escorted by one unimpressed human liaison with granola crumbs on his shirt, is a memory I intend to treasure for the rest of my life. "You found them," she said, in the tone of someone forced to admit something deeply unpleasant. "They weren't lost. They were exactly where your own religious texts said they'd be. Your people just didn't want to explain that to me because I'm human, and apparently we don't understand Irithyll architecture." The silence after that was, once again, bottleable. Word got around fast, as these things do. The Empire's entire military-religious apparatus, the unkillable guards, the ancient priesthood, the layers of sacred protocol, had all failed to locate three missing princesses that a junior human translator found in under 6 hours using a granola bar and common sense. It did wonders for interspecies relations, in the sense that every other species in the sector started quietly wondering what else humans were noticing that everyone was too proud to ask about. As for me, I got promoted. New title, roughly 9 syllables long, translating to something like Cultural Liaison Attaché of Sensitive Internal Matters, which came with exactly 0 actual authority and a very nice office nobody important ever visited. I recognized it immediately for what it was. Not a reward. A quiet, dignified way of making sure I never got close enough to embarrass anyone again. Which, honestly, tracks. We didn't save the day because humans are special, chosen, or secretly superior. We saved it because we're nosy, unimpressed by pageantry, and annoyingly willing to ask the obvious question nobody else wants to say out loud. Turns out that's terrifying, coming from a species that also builds unkillable palace guards and still forgets to check under the floorboards.